This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
It's Oh Behave with Arden Moore, the show that teaches you how to have harmony in the household with your pets. Join Arden as she travels coast to coast to help millions better understand why cats and dogs do what they do. Get the latest scoop on famous faces, their perfectly pampered pets, and who's walking who in Rin Tin Tinseltown. From famous pet experts and best-selling authors to television and movie stars, you'll get the latest buzz from wagging tongues and tails. Garner great pet tips and have a doggone fur-flying fun time. So get ready for the pause and applause as we unleash your Oh Behave host, America's pet edutainer, Arden Moore.
Welcome to the Oh Behave Show on Pet Life Radio. I'm your host, Arden Moore. Can dogs get the blues? Can they actually develop depression? Well, for answers on today's show, we are reaching out to one of the world's most acclaimed veterinary behaviorists. I'm going to just say it. I think he's top dog in that field. His credentials, following his name, they could fill a bowl of alphabet soup. He's got a lot of certifications in many, many areas. Please join me in giving pause and applause to the remarkable Dr. Nicholas Dodman. Welcome to the show, Dr. Nick.
Oh, thank you, Arden, and thank you for that wonderful introduction.
You're going to look at alphabet soup differently, aren't you now?
I absolutely am.
Hey, he's here to help us with a tough diagnosis, doggy depression, and some things. You know, COVID whacked us all, and it's making its impact on us and our dogs. We're going to find out some things about how to identify it, what we can do about it after we take this quick break. So sit, stay. We'll be right back.
Time for a pause. 4 furry ones, actually. Sit and stay. Oh Behave will be right back.
Hey, pet pals. Arden Moore here from the Oh Behave Show, talking to you about a great company called Natural Farm. They make all natural dog chews and bones. Yum yum for the dogs. They are single ingredients. They're very nice to the environment, and they support a lot of animal welfare groups. Check them out for your dogs. They're bully sticks, gullet sticks, collagen sticks, and peanut butter, chicken, and other flavors. You get to choose what chew for your dog. Go to naturalfarmpet.com. Pause up.
Use promo code BEHAVE15 for 15% off store-wide.
Let's talk pets on PetLifeRadio.com. Oh Behave is back with more tail-wagging ways to achieve harmony in the household with your pets. Now back to your fetching host, America's pet edutainer, Arden Moore.
Welcome back to the Oh Behave Show on Pet Life Radio. I'm your host, Arden Moore. I've got a good friend here and a good friend to your dogs, and he is Dr. Nicholas Dodman. He is, I think you're the CEO and co-founder or president. We're going to get all this right here for the Center for Canine Behavior Studies. We're going to say the website. It's real easy. I want you to check it out after the show, dogstudies.org. And he also created the Behavior Center at Tufts University. That's where he and I met each other. I'm so glad you're back on the Oh Behave Show, Dr. Nicholas Dodman.
No, it's good to be here.
So what you been up to, man?
Well, a lot of my time has been spent with the center, CCBS we call it, CCBS, Center for Canine Behavior Studies. We have meetings all the time. We actually looked ourselves up on ChatGPT the other day, and it came out a wonderful account. It said founded in 2012 by Chris Gilly and Nick Dodman. They produced some, epic publications on aggression and fearful behaviors in dogs, and working. They did say, nice. However, it's been tricky for them over the years to obtain sufficient funding, which is true. I mean, everything ChatGPT said was true.
Well, you are a nonprofit, and when people after the show, if they go to dogstudies.org, please check out, because there's some studies there, but there's also ways that people can help and be part of it and even get a cool T-shirt they can buy and some other things. So I support you on your effort and what you're doing, Dr. Dodman. And you even do cat studies and help cats. Come on.
Yeah, actually, we've even got a horse study going on in the background right now.
Does that make you a naysayer?
Yeah, I guess so.
Oh, that was bad. That was bad. Hey, let's talk about, how do dogs get depressed? I know we talk about separation anxiety and fear and anxiety and stress, but how do you define depression in dogs?
Well, the answer to the question is, do they get depression? The answer is most certainly yes, they do. And what makes them depressed? Pretty much the same things that can make us depressed. In particular, I would say things that I've actually experienced in the clinic of people coming and asking me, why is my dog behaving like this? And it could be that somebody in the household that the dog was very attached to has died or moved away permanently. Maybe there's been a divorce or some such. Sometimes it's if a dog is very closely bonded to another dog and its good companion suddenly isn't there. That can lead to depression. And I've had amazing stories, like one person was trying to prevent their dog from seeing the other dog that had to be put down because it was riddled with cancer. So they took it out for a very long walk, and they had dug a grave in the backyard for the other one. It was put down, brought home, buried about 3 feet deep, covered in soil, covered in stones in the backyard. When they came back with the remaining dog, it ran all around the house looking for its buddy, and eventually started looking in the garden and found the grave, and it sat on it for 2 days straight.
Oh my gosh. What kind of dogs were they? Do you remember?
I forget, it was too long ago, but
boy, what does that tell you?
Lots of stories like that. It tells me that they have sensitive moods. Dogs do have feelings. They are sentient creatures. They do experience anxiety. Some people in the past even doubted they felt anxious. They doubted they felt pain. Gradually, all the anthropomorphisms that dog owners have been using for years, that were just, for scientists would say, go wash your mouth out with soap. You can't think a dog thinks like that. Well, now it's coming true. They get all of the conditions, the anxieties, the fears, the PTSD. Even one breed we studied has a version of autism. So it's all there, including depression. So I wrote a book called Pets on the Couch, and I had a whole chapter at the back of that on depression and told some of the stories. But when they get depressed, they do the same things that we might do. So typically they will go off food. They're just anxious. Alternatively, they might sort of eat to sort of control the boredom. But there's changes in eating behavior. Normally, in my own personal experience, it's normally a suppression of appetite.
Okay.
They act, and here I am being anthropomorphic, sort of grey, sort of sad, morose, don't do the normal things they would normally do. There's a lack of playing is just gone. They spend an inordinate amount of time sleeping, and just they look, if you're an owner who's in tune with their dog, you say something's changed. He looks really low. He looks really blue. And it's obviously happened when such and such a person died, or such and such a dog had to be put to sleep, or something like that. There's always a trigger, and it just makes a perfect picture. And they respond to human antidepressants.
Okay, so let's back up a little bit. We talked about there's some changes in their environment, changes in their connections with some bonds that they may have with a person, a dog, or even a cat. How is this different than the separation anxiety that people are talking about now with COVID, where people are going back to work? Can a dog actually have separation anxiety and depression?
Yes, they can. Let me just back up 1 second. That the only type of depression that's been identified in dogs is what's called state aggression. We all might get depressed. For example, if a parent or a sibling or a child dies, you become very low, very blue, you're very sad. It's quite a normal sort of process to go through, grieving, and everybody does it. It's not a pathological condition. So you can be depressed for a very good reason. That's called state depression. There's a different type in humans where they have that, as I said, but there's another one called trait aggression. And that does happen in people, and people have unipolar or bipolar depression. Bipolar, they oscillate between two different poles of an extreme outward behavior or extreme depression. Unipolar depression and such like. This is a trait, and people will cycle. There's rapid cycling depression and more slower cycling, where people have bouts of becoming really low. There was one mega donor to the University of Massachusetts who was a very successful pharmacologist, and he donated a lot of money to build the so-called Brudnick Research Center University of Massachusetts. Well, he had this unipolar depression, and his wife always knew when it was coming down because she'd hear he played the piano, and he'd go down into the basement on this grand piano and start playing all this wonderful music, and she'd go, here we go again. That was always the beginning.
Oh,
so dogs
the trigger.
don't get that sort of trait aggression, but they do get state aggression.
Well, you just schooled me, and I did not know the difference. And how long has it been that people even knew dogs have state depression? I'm sure you've had a role in researching that.
Yeah, that's true. Just the fact they could be depressed at the loss of a loved one or some other cataclysmic life event, a prolonged separation, as in death or distance. Yeah, they go really low. And sometimes, drugs aside, antidepressants aside, if you're lucky, if you bring a new puppy into the house, the puppy can kind of jolly them out of it. I've managed to achieve that a few times. They go like, will it work? And it's worth a try, and it has worked. And you try to jolly them along, you try and play games with them, you try and spend a bit more time, and you've got to really kind of jolly them out of the funk. But you mentioned separation anxiety, and there are different ways that dogs manifest separation anxiety. And the one that most people think of, which apparently affects something between, our own study showed 13% of United States dogs show it. The Novartis, the drug company that made Clomicalm, they said 15% of dogs have it. Elanco, the veterinary wing of Eli Lilly and Company, they made the veterinary Prozac, a so-called Reconcile, and they calculated 17%. So if you take the middle percentage, 15% or 1 in 6 dogs suffer from separation anxiety. But now you're talking about a syndrome that everybody knows about. The dogs don't want you to leave. They're anxious before you leave. They act out. They're miserable when you're gone. They don't eat. They might exhibit destructive behavior, trying to escape through windows or scratching on the back of doors, pulling down microblinds. They might howl, vocalize, and then they greet you exuberantly when you come home. So that's a syndrome most people understand as separation anxiety. But there's another type of dog that when their owner leaves, they become extremely low and depressed. If you film them, they go across and they'll just lie down on their bed, and you might say, oh, he's sleeping. But in fact, he's almost weeping, he's in a state of temporary depression because of the loss of his family or pack, whichever you want to call it. He's alone and he's miserable. In fact, there was a study in England where they measured stress hormones. I learned about this from Dr. Danny Mills, who's at Lincoln University in England. And he said in a 1-hour television program on BBC that in one study, I believe it was their own study, 80% of dogs left home alone have an increase in stress hormones. That is, they're totally stressed out. And people don't realize it because they come back and know the curtains are not being ripped off and the neighbors haven't complained about barking. The dog's just super stressed. And one way they do it is the stress will cause a sort of temporary depression, which is alleviated when the person gets back. So with the COVID situation, you can totally understand that they got so used to having people around, which would be their preferred way. Their family is always around. And then suddenly they go back to work, and it's like pulling the rug out, because that is one of the triggers for separation anxiety, is a sudden change in environment. Like a typical scenario, just to give you one example, would be a school teacher who's at home all summer with their dog, and then they go back to school in the fall. And when they go back to school, the dog now got so used to having them that the separation anxiety can re-emerge. Maybe it was there before, and it's catapulted back into separation anxiety. So there's a number of situations like that. A person's at home because they've had an injury, and when they get better, they go back to work, and same thing.
Hey, everybody, we're speaking with Dr. Nicholas Dodman. He is the one who is at the head of the Center for Canine Behavior Studies. I want you to check out dogstudies.org. They also have things for cats, too. But we're going to come back and talk about some things that we can do to help our pets that may have the depression, and talk about some medicine after we take this break. So stay. We'll be right back.
Time for a walk on the red carpet, of course. All Behave will be back in a flash, right after these messages.
Take a bite out of your competition. Advertise your business with an ad in Pet Life Radio podcasts and radio shows. There is no other pet-related media that is as large and reaches more pet parents and pet lovers than Pet Life Radio. With over 7 million monthly listeners, Pet Life Radio podcasts are available on all major podcast platforms. And our live radio stream goes out to over 250 million subscribers on iHeartRadio, Odyssey, TuneIn, Stitcher, and other streaming apps. For more information on how you can advertise on the #1 pet podcast and radio network, visit PetLifeRadio.com/advertise today.
Let's talk pets
Let's talk pets
on Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com. We're back from the lot. Just checked the paper and we had a record showing at the box. The letterbox, that is. Now back to Oh Behave. Here's Arden.
Welcome back to the Oh Behave Show on Pet Life Radio. I'm your host, Arden Moore. This is a really important topic, and I purposely reached out to who I think is the #1 expert on it, and that is Dr. Nicholas Dodman, a very acclaimed veterinary behaviorist. You also have a PhD in pharmacology or something. Come on, what some of the things say. You're a student and a teacher.
Well, I guess we're all students. I mean, I never stopped learning, so that was always looking for new things. I was told when my first board certification was in veterinary anesthesia, and latterly, after 10 or 15 years in the group, I was talking to one of the members, and I said, what is it about me? I said, people seem to sort of treat me with some degree of suspicion. And she said, the thing is, you always blow our socks off because you come in and you're talking about something completely new, whether it's the changes of brain neurotransmitters during anesthesia or some method of humidification of anesthetic tubes to make dogs recover quickly. It's always something new and just groundbreaking, and I just love that stuff. I like to do new things. So when I got into behavior, I brought my knowledge of pharmacology, which comes from anesthesiology, and was recognized as one of the sort of premier veterinary pharmacologists, and wrote the first textbook on the subject. So pharmacology, physiology, behavior have been always in my life.
Well, and I want to do a shout out because for 8 years, I was the editor of Catnip through Tufts University, and you were one of my top people there that I could reach out to and learn a lot about behavior. So you're an amazing person, and I have appreciated through all the years the things that I have learned from you. And so I'm telling you, thanks. And I haven't won the lottery yet, so when I do, I'll let you know.
Please do. We need all the help we can get at the center. Anybody who wants to spare a dime.
All right. So what are some things that we can do at home? And what are some things that are being done with medicine that seems to be having a little bit of impact? But you've always taught me that it should be sort of a game plan with different areas to bring out the best in the dog.
Well, one thing that I think is important to try and have happen is to increase exercise. And a lot of people think that when you get a decent amount of cardiovascular type exercise, aerobic, running, playing, just running on a beach or running through a wood, preferably off lead if you can, if the dog doesn't run away, gamboling around. People think, exercise generates endorphins, these feel-good chemicals. Yeah, and probably it does. But one of the main things it does is it generates serotonin. And serotonin has a mood stabilizing and antidepressant effect. So first therapy would be exercise. The second therapy really that's easy to do would be perhaps a change in diet, because certain diets do promote, if you will, the bad neurotransmitters, the ones that, favor the formation of, for example, norepinephrine would be a neurotransmitter that you could enhance its production by feeding foods that are rich in certain amino acids. I believe tyrosine would be involved there. But you feed diets that maybe, on the other hand, are richer in, for example, tryptophan. So, the typical one is L-tryptophan, or you could use 5-hydroxytryptophan. But tryptophan...
Are we talking turkey?
We are talking turkey. Although I think that's been disproven. The reason people sleep so much at Thanksgiving is not because of the turkey, it's all the wine they drank.
Oh, there you go. But let's talk about, because people, maybe there's a food that will help boost the mood. And so what are you saying specifically? If people's looking at reading the label, what are some things that might be good for the mood for the dog?
There is one proprietary food that's just called, the diet's name is Calm. I believe it's made by Royal Canin. And I've read the ingredients in that, and they are exactly what you'd expect. I believe it has increase in angstitane, which is an amino acid, just a normal building block of protein that has some anxiolytic properties. So that can be helpful. Tryptophan is helpful. non-amino acid melatonin can sometimes be helpful, but you've got to be a bit careful with that. But the people who made the calm diet, which is rather expensive and probably only good for smaller dogs because of the expense, that's all. Yeah, but there are twists that you can do on a diet, even on your own, with supplement.
Okay.
So
Like
diet
what?
is another thing you can do.
Well, what would be a supplement you could get maybe to add to your meal?
Well, I think the first one that I would think of would be tryptophan.
Okay.
Because, well, there is tryptophan you have to use, they call it L-tryptophan because it rotates light, the molecule rotates light to the left. So tryptophan has to be converted to its 5-hydroxy derivative. So,
oh my gosh.
And you can buy the 5-hydroxy tryptophan. It's just called 5-HTP. And you can buy it in GNC, you can buy it in CVS, you can probably buy it in your supermarket, anywhere that sort of sells supplements. You just have to get the dose right. And to do that, I think rather than giving too much and whacking a dog out, it's better to talk to your vet about that and say,
yes,
look,
please.
I'd like to give this medicine. I believe it could be helpful in this situation. Do you agree? And what would you recommend? The dose is out there. People can look it up, dose of 5-hydroxytryptamine for a dog, but I would still involve the dog. It's twice a day.
Okay. So you've talked about 2 different therapies. I think we're now shifting more into some medicines too that might help, right?
Well, you might want to, just in terms of environment, as it were, just to spend more quality time with your dog, to be more involved, more engaged. And then you've got that sort of social companionship study with, I said getting another puppy, but, even having friends, dogs come over and visit, or take your dog around to another house full of friendly dogs to interact. You've got to increase their ability to their outlook, really, outlook activity, to sort of nurse them along. And of course you can use antidepressant drugs like Prozac and Clomicalm and whatever else, as long as the vet knows they're prescription drugs. So you'd have to get your vet to prescribe them, and one vet might favor Paxil, another one might favor Zoloft, but they're all in the same class. They're so-called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, or SSRIs. There's actually another class similar to that. They're called SNRIs. They selectively affect the reuptake of serotonin and norepinephrine. So sometimes you might want to increase norepinephrine if, in some situations, but that's where the vet gets involved and it gets complicated. You do and you don't, or you might not. There's new treatments for people which have not been tried in dogs yet, and they say for people, something like ketamine, which is a dissociative anesthetic that is single dose. I believe sometimes it has to be followed up. There's some company I know is developing an oral supplement that can sort of kick that can down the road, but ketamine is an antidepressant type action given in sometimes a single dose. And some of the other psychoactive drugs like psilocybin are getting some mention in psychiatric conditions these days as being potentially useful, having been vilified for years.
Have you found any genetic component, any dog passing on to another dog, or certain breeds that might be more prone to depression?
I personally have not. But the fact is, some breeds are more sensitive than others. And, just one study that we did, we looked at thunderstorm phobia in dogs, and we found that 50% of all the dogs, it was a fairly large study, wasn't massive, but like 100 dogs or so, I can't remember the exact number. But about half of them were either herding breeds or herding breed crosses. I think a lot of German Shepherds these days tend to be a little bit on the anxious side. You can argue the late Ray Coppinger would have said that herding breeds were selected not to commit to a full crushing bite, because if they bit the sheep they were supposed to herd, that was a bad thing, and sometimes they were put down as a result. So they've selected for, if you will, some kind of hesitation in their behavioral repertoire, which might translate into an element of anxiety. Certainly, a lot of shepherds I see are anxious, and some border collies are very sensitive. But never mind the breeds. A sensitive dog, one who kind of cowers away from people, probably on account of earlier experiences, but nevertheless sensitive enough to allow that to make its mark, or one that is shy around other dogs, shy around people, a dog who's prone to developing, for example, sound fear, that, if the fire alarm goes off in the house, the smoke alarm, They shake and they shiver. I've got a dog just like that, as a matter of fact. Rusty's, he doesn't even like to hear the crackling on the grill when you're cooking salmon in olive oil and there's this noise.
Wow.
And he's shaking. When I first got him, he would shake when I took my belt off because I think his previous owner had whipped him. And he would shake when I shook out a trash can because he had the habit of taking trash out of a trash can when we were away. It's a sort of version of separation anxiety, which we realized in the early days and did something about. But the previous owner, when he found all the trash around, something to do with the trash can, putting back he shouted it. So trash can, just shaking the trash can bag out. And he had been on the corner of the room, pressed against the wall. This kind of sensitive dog, if you will, I think, there are different personalities in dogs, and it's kind of more of a sort of shy, sensitive personality rather than the sort of, hail fellow, well met, hey, I'm a dog, hey, watch out.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Some of them are very confident and some of them aren't. I think the ones who, for reasons of genetics or for reasons of, maybe earlier tough experiences, are sort of shy. Those are the ones who would form actually the closest bonds. And those are the ones who would be the most seriously affected if that bond is suddenly, unexpectedly ruptured.
I really appreciate you being on the show. I know hey, everybody, the show's called Oh Behave, but we're on a behavior that needs to be identified, addressed, and given some ideas of what we can do to help each pet on an individual basis to kind of feel a little bit better and not feel so blue. I keep wanting to sing an Elvis song, But any parting message you'd like to give our listeners? You are on now the longest running pet podcast on the planet. We've been on the air since 2007.
Goodness gracious, congratulations. Well, I just think, if anybody wanted to know anything about, for example, dog demographics, how common a particular behavior problem is in the country, how many dogs do engage in the disgusting habit of coprophagia or rolling in disgusting stuff.
Poop, poop.
We've got it all. What's the best thing to do if you've got a dog that is showing aggression? We've done that study with thousands of people in it. What happens if your dog is fearful, afraid, or anxious? Who's the best type of consultant to see? What is the best program to use? How does it work out? What are your odds of success? What happens when you see the vet? Are medications helpful? How about ancillary aids? All that is answered not only in Scientese, because there are scientific papers, but we've got a wonderful PhD in English who works with us, who translates papers into what on the website is referred to as simplified version.
Oh, I saw that. I like that.
The complicated scientific stuff into something that actually, normal people can read and understand.
Your brain doesn't hurt as much. And I love you have newsletters there. You do a shout out about cat research. You're an amazing person leading a great army to help our dogs and our cats. And so I'm going to give you a big paws up to that, Dr. Nicholas Dodman.
Thank you. We've got a new study going on with cats right now. It's a genetic study looking for the gene that causes compulsive disorder, studying Burmans. In particular, because it's better to study genetics in one breed, one pure breed.
Yes.
And the behavior we chose was, sort of what they call wool sucking, which kind of goes hand in glove with pico, which is, eating inedible objects. If you've got a Burman that eats holes in your sweater, what is the genetic thing that causes that? And we believe that would be important not only for cats in general, but also for other species, including dogs and perhaps humans. We're all mammals on this planet together.
I had a Siamese cat named Corky as a kid, and I'm the third daughter, and I finally didn't get a hand-me-down. I got a beautiful wool vest. Came home from school, and Corky had a cannonball-size hole in it.
Yeah, I've got a slide in my cat's collection. It's got a picture. Somebody took their pure wool sweater, and they hung it up on the line and took a photograph of it after their cat had been at it, and it just looked like you'd taken a shotgun and fired it at the sweater. Holes all over the place, big holes.
Wow. Well, we're saying thank you very much for being on the show. Please, everyone, check out dogstudies.org. At this time, also, I want to give a shout out to my producer, Mark Winter. He is the surgeon of sound. He is the executive producer of Pet Life Radio, the largest radio network on pets on the planet. And maybe, if we get to the moon, we can boast that too. I hope you will check out other shows on our network and check me out at ardenmoore.com. And until next time, this is your flea-free host, Arden Moore, delivering just 2 words to all you 2, 3, and 4-leggers out there. Oh, behave.
coast to coast and around the world, it's All Behave with Arden Moore. Find out why cats and dogs do the things they do and get the latest buzz from wagging tongues and tails in Rin Tin Tinseltown. From famous pet experts and best-selling authors to television and movie stars, you'll get great tail-wagging pet tips and have a fur-flying fun time. All Behave with America's pet edutainer, Arden Moore. Every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.